This art video was made using a random animal generator online, which I set to 3 animals. It's an excellent opportunity to study, draw, and paint, as well as research 3 different animals for your own personal knowledge. Then you can use that knowledge to create a fantasy creature based on those 3 animals, which I find to be a lot of fun. As you can see, I begun with the jaguar studies. The first step, actually, after getting the first 3 random animals initially, was to collect more reference. I used a few public domain photo reference sites. The ones I used in this case were pixabay.com, pexels.com, and unsplash.com. When I was doing all the research on the jaguar, it became very clear that some were much more yellowish or golden, while others were actually very reddish in hue. Jaguars in general are like a more heavily built leopard. They are the largest of the American cats, that is, North and South America. Jaguars have rosette-grouped spots that can have a central spot in the middle, whereas leopards do not have this central spot. Living from the southern USA all the way down to Patagonia, primarily they live in the dense jungle habitats of South America. Known to hunt even caiman and crocodiles, other large creatures up to the size of cows. More commonly, they hunt fish and all kinds of smaller land animals. The top predator in their environment, the thing they fear most, aside from human hunters, is a larger member of their own kind. Jaguar also tend to have more greenish eyes and tones of green, whereas leopards tend to be very golden-eyed. Mostly nocturnal and an ambush hunter, they tend to prefer to attack their prey when unnoticed by their prey, and most commonly attack from behind and slightly above. When I was working on the face, I used the symmetry tool in Procreate in order to make both sides exactly identical. I intentionally didn't draw in parts I knew wouldn't be identical, such as the ears. Then I turned the symmetry tool off, and I done all the details in the face that were not symmetrical on both sides. I used different layers in Procreate to get these kind of effects and drawings done more easily. So, for example, I do the sketch layer, which sometimes becomes the line art layer directly, on top, and underneath I fill in a solid color fill, then alpha lock it and use clipping masks to draw only where the color is. Behind all that, I tend to do the background colors. I use several layers and alpha locks and clipping masks to get my artwork done. Unlike the previous animal I did a study of, the jaguar, the iguana is actually a family of lizards rather than an individual species. The larger green iguana can grow up to 6 feet, which is 1.8 meters, most of which is the long tail. They are also commonly kept as pets and are one of the most common members of the iguana family. There's also several other species. They grow spines and skin flaps as they age, and most members of the iguana family are herbivorous, while some are omnivorous, eating a few smaller animals. The marine iguana, for example, is a species exclusive to the Galapagos and is the only living seafaring lizard that browses on algae underwater. They have various kinds of scales, which I find to be visually appealing, and most species have very large display scales on their cheeks in particular. Many males get more colorful and impressive during the breeding season, but a few remain more colorful if they are particularly dominant in their territory. They seem to keep this color brighter for longer. This includes being dominant over other iguanas or humans when domesticated. In order to work on this well, I pre-created a color palette I was going to use for it, but I only created a color palette that was pretty good for the more dull lizard. I just chose the colors randomly off the color wheel that I felt most closely resembled or color matched the reference. I decided to include one slightly duller colored and one more dominant colorful iguana, which closely resemble the reference photos I was basing these studies on. I used different layers in Procreate app to do this. Primarily a line art layer, an underneath layer for color, and a background beneath that. You really don't need too many layers. You should feel free, however, to use as many layers as is helpful to you with digital art. Keep in mind it takes more processing power, makes a program more likely to crash, and uses up more memory space on your computer when you use more layers, but at the same time, sometimes it is better to use more layers to get special effects. There are two species of mink, the European and the American. The American is more aggressive and has been introduced worldwide due to the fur trade industry. Many of the instances of them occurring in the wild result in a reduction of the European mink and a negative impact on the environment in areas that they're not native to, because they are very fierce and stealthy predators. Mink are also very skilled swimmers. The accidental introduction of the American mink back into Europe due to farming has reduced the population of the European mink, who is less aggressive in comparison and doesn't seem to defend itself quite as well. A relative of weasels and otters, and are quite closely between these two other families, and a member of the Mustelidae family. These carnivores are very cute, but as I said, are known to be particularly vicious and cruel. On land, they commonly hunt small mammals and birds, and in the water, crayfish, frogs, and fish. For the final creature design, combining the three animals, I began with a lizard base, because I decided I wanted basically a lizard body type, and I added on the features of the mink and the jaguar. That's a pretty good tip for a lot of creature designs, to start with the body base of one of the creatures you're mostly basing it on. Here I'm adding in the different markings. They're basically just regular jaguar markings. When I ended up coloring it, I went with a combination of all three animals' colorations, but in a way that looks and feels natural to me. While designing it, I figured it would be a small omnivorous animal on the world it's from, that lives in tropical areas and is quite a generalist, adaptable to different food conditions. For the background in this painting, I did the sky first, and then I did the grassy background on top of it. On a layer above that, I did the flat colors for the rock, and all the colorations I ended up doing on the rock on top of that layer. The line art is on top of that. I ended up erasing some of the rough sketches of the plants, because the final versions would probably look better without that really rough line art. I also used various downloaded texture brushes, including grain brushes, to help me do the rock texture more realistically. I also used a reference photo to help me with the background and general idea of the lizard pose, but I did change it from the reference. I made sure to include some different colors in with it, and sections of fur leading into scales. I think in general this creature would actually also be quite good at climbing trees due to the long balancing tail. This creature will remain unnamed for 1 month to allow people time to leave suggestions for names in the comments section below. After that, I'll probably name it myself. Feel free to leave any other questions, comments, suggestions, and constructive criticisms as well. And if you like my videos, consider subscribing. And if you wish for notifications, please consider hitting that notification bell for post notifications. I aim for a new video every Wednesday, but various things can sometimes cause delays. I hope that everyone looks forward to new videos. Goodbye!